We're on the last Devo in the series on casting, and this one is found in the New Testament when the disciples cast their nets to catch fish. So the first mention of this casting of nets is when Jesus actually called the fishermen to follow him. Matthew says they were casting their net into the lake, for they were fishermen. In other words, they were about their business, doing their vocation, and it was nothing glamorous, but rather laborious, casting nets. Jesus called them to fish for men, and it says they left their nets immediately and followed Jesus. Were they tired of casting their own nets and mending them and all that entails? Did the thought of fishing for men intrigue them, or were they just smitten with the fact that Jesus wanted them and called them? The story is told again in Mark, and this time the verbiage used is when Jesus asked these guys to follow him. It says at once they left their nets, and without delay they followed Jesus. And it says again that they were casting their nets, for they were fishermen. Jesus told these guys that instead of casting nets, which had to be mended, maintained, and their own skill and sea of fish determined what their catch would be, to now follow Jesus, and he was going to turn their cast into a sea of humanity of fishing for men, trading their casting efforts into Jesus catching men. Let's read on in Mark 1 as Jesus showed these fishermen what it's like to fish for men. First, he enters a city where there's a man bound by an impure spirit. Jesus sets the guy free, and the news of this story about how unclean spirits obey Jesus spread across the land. Next, Jesus healed many that were sick and diseased, and Jesus kept going. And these fishermen that had been casting their nets are still observing and seeing people set free and healed. Same thing in Matthew. When Jesus told the guys to leave their nets and follow him, it says people brought to Jesus all who were ill with various diseases, those suffering in pain, the demon-possessed, people having seizures, and all the paralyzed, and he healed them. Have you ever been fishing and cast a net? I have not, but I've cast a fishing line with my dad many times, and I really enjoyed it. Dad taught me how to bait the hook, how to find a spot where the fish might be biting, how to cast over the seaweed or hanging tree branches so my line wouldn't get caught up when I cast. But every single time I got caught up anyway, no matter how skilled I thought I was or how well I had listened. It seemed that when I cast and started to reel in the line, it got tangled up somewhere. Or I thought I caught a fish only to see a blob of seaweed on the bottom of the hook. And though I learned to cast, sometimes I hit a branch when I didn't cast out far enough or reeled in too fast or too slow. Catching fish was tricky. It depended on the time of the day, the season, the bait, the cast, all the things. And some people love the casting and the reeling and the waiting, and it's relaxing and challenging and fun. Others, like my husband, not so much. But the interesting part of this story is that Jesus chose fishermen that cast nets off their boats to catch fish. And one last story is when the fishermen were casting their nets on one side of the boat, catching nothing, and Jesus says, cast your net on the other side, and they caught many. Just a simple switch from their usual way to the way Jesus said to do it. So today the phrase casting your net might mean to try many different things so that no one will have the best chance of finding what one wants. Let me say that the correct way. Try many different things so that one will have the best chance of finding what one wants. Like companies casting their nets wide in search of young, talented employees. That's the idea of casting lots again, a random throw, hoping to find something good that satisfies. So this last Devo of the story of casting nets shows us several things, and so does this entire study on the word cast. We have this thing called our own effort and this thing called living, even when following Christ. We get in a routine of casting, hoping, the same thing day after day, and then Jesus shows up. He redirects our cast. He asks us to follow him and observe how he cast his net into humanity. He wants us to be captured by his love so that we cast our nets into something larger than the mundane chores of life that leave us frustrated and empty or with torn and broken nets. Humanity desperately needs the love of God, and Jesus demonstrated this while his disciples followed him. He brought sound minds to the tormented. He healed those in need of life. And we can be content with casting our nets as usual, or we can follow Christ and obey His directive and see life come alive in everyday living in those we encounter. For me, casting nets as usual might look like this. I wake up, catch the news, shake my head in disgust or delight, depending on what I hear, make my list, plan my day, hoping for good outcomes and results with work or home or kids or family, catching thoughts that fly by in my head as they weigh me down with concern and worry, then bringing those alongside us that we can dump on or criticize or think poorly of so we can think more highly of ourselves, maybe ending the day tired and exhausted, the net pulling, the mending, the daily chores, only to end up empty when my head or our heads hit the pillow. Or we can cast off our idols, quit casting slurs, cast all our anxiety on Him, cast but a glance at riches, cast our bread on the waters, not be afraid of the fire and the lions, and realize that chance casting and routine casting can completely be traded in for following Christ, casting our nets in humanity with the kind of love He offered to all, the love that sets people free and heals their diseases. And here's what that might look like. Waking up and laying down our nets for the day, asking Him where to cast, not listening to doom and gloom or woes, and not worrying about this or that, but walking out into the world to love like Jesus does, laying aside our normal to make a new cast of listening when He says cast here or follow me there. Casting nets, casting fishing lines, getting tangled up in seaweed. I don't want to live like that on this shore of the beautiful life we have. I do want to cast His love into the sea called humanity and watch the return, because after all, they know we are followers of Him by the love we have to each other. Lay down your nets, listen to His voice, immediately obey, and if He says cast here or there, and you too might be unable to haul in the net of the catch because it's teeming with life.